Today we're talking with District 24 House candidates, Republican Paul Renner and Democrat Adam Morley. Adam, since your name starts with A, why don't you tell us just basically, who you are and why you're sitting here today, why you want to be doing what you're doing today.
All right, very good. Well, I was born and raised in District 24, Southern St. John's, and Northern Flagler is my growing up tromping grounds. My wife and I started our own private recycling company in 2008, just recently sold it. That was A&J Recycling Service. I've been a captain for over a decade, leading trips out of St. Augustine and all the way down the East Coast into the Everglades National Park, where I trained with the National Park Service as an interpretive guide and naturalist. So,
Charter boat captain?
Charter boat captain.
Fishing?
I grew up, started with the fishing charter industry, and now I'm more in the tours. So that's what I'm doing currently. I work 1 day a week as a guide, as a captain, and campaign 6 days a week. So.
You're a busy guy.
I'm very busy, yes.
So tell me, why do you want to be in the house?
So this is my home. Again, I was born and raised here. My wife and I were both born and raised here. We're starting our family here. We have our first child due in July. So we're looking to make sure that there's a bright future for our kid.
Okay. You want to take that one?
Yeah, sure, thank
So
you.
you are.
So I'm Paul Renner, and I'm the Republican running for State House District 24. And the reason I'm running for office is really twofold. One is personal, one political. And on the personal side, I also grew up in Northeast Florida, was a preacher's kid. Mom was a school teacher. And so for me, our conversations around the dinner table focused around public service, and that really instilled in me a love for public service. And that led me and my own life to join the Navy. And that was my first public service, and had the privilege to serve in Operation Desert Storm in 1991 as a junior officer on the USS McInerney stationed in Mayport, and served over during the Gulf War there, and got out of active duty, went to law school, and then back into public service and became a prosecutor. And that was a fantastic experience, defending victims and putting bad people behind bars, and focused on public safety, which I think is one of the priorities of government. And after I finished with the state attorney's office, I went into business law, which is what I do today, helping a lot of small businesses in our community navigate tough legal issues and continue to grow and create jobs. Now, in 2010, I continued as a reservist and went back to war in Afghanistan for about a year in 2011. And for me, looking ahead at what public service means and what I hope to do in Tallahassee, our veterans are really the model, and I think they exhibit many qualities, but three that come to mind, and that's a deep love of country, a belief in service above self, and a determination to never quit until the mission's complete. And so for me, and the way I approach Tallahassee, those will be the three criteria that I hope to bring, or characteristics I hope to bring to the office. And then on the political side, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, obviously, and so for me, I think we need to make sure we're moving in the right direction, which means on the economic front, to grow the economy and create jobs, we need to trust the private sector, individuals and businesses, to do what they do best, and that our taxes and regulation should be as light as possible, consistent with the basic needs of government and health and safety. And so if we set the right environment that's pro-business and pro-growth, we can generate more revenue and address a lot of the priorities of education and roads and bridges and things we all care about. And then additionally, I think we need to focus on opportunity. We need to talk about how every child, Adam mentioned his family, and how every child can start out knowing that no matter where they come from, they can rise to their dreams. And I think that means education, and continuing to reform our education system in a way that offers people opportunity. And then finally, is quality of life. I think is the third bucket I would look at in the legislature. Is we have a great quality of life in Florida, and in this district in particular. We're here in St. Augustine today, and it's one of my favorite cities in the country. And so maintaining what attracts people to Florida to live, but also visitors. We have almost 100 million visitors coming to Florida now, and the best kind of taxes are those that Floridians don't pay. And so bringing, encouraging tourism here in St. Augustine and St. Johns County is one thing that we can do, but in order to do that, we need clean beaches. We need clean rivers. We need to continue to maintain our historical areas in a way that keeps them attractive to people coming to visit. So that's a little bit about me and what I'm hoping to do when I'm in Tallahassee.
If you had to tell us what your one issue would be, once you get to Tallahassee, or if you get to Tallahassee, what would that be? What would be your one thing you would focus on?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
I would say it really is what everybody's concerned about, is that economic growth and job creation. And the government can't create jobs, but they can set the right environment or the wrong environment. So looking at our regulatory structure and making sure we're doing things that make common sense, again, consistent with health and safety, but don't inspect somebody 5 times if you can inspect them once. Try to bring some common sense. I've talked to small business owners, a guy that was going to open a pizza and sub shop, and he's 2.5 years in, and just some of the requirements don't seem to align with common sense. So I think it's helpful to look at sunsetting certain regulations, not because they should go away necessarily, but because they need to be revisited. Something we did 50 years ago in a different economy doesn't necessarily make sense today. And governments oftentimes does things in a way to try to be helpful, but they don't think about the second and third order consequences of their actions, and that leads to problems. And so just revisiting some of our regulations and making sure that they make sense and are as light as possible on our businesses, our small businesses in particular, I think is one thing that I would look at doing. And there are other priorities I mentioned too. Education is obviously very important. We've got to look at our health care cost and Medicaid, and how we can reform Medicaid, hopefully in a way that improves quality in an area where I don't think we have a lot of quality, and keeps costs down, but also hopefully expands access.
What about you?
So I like to keep my answers short and try not to bore the audience. Honestly, with the campaign, this is my first campaign. One of the biggest things that I'm thinking right now, because honestly, when you get into office, there's a lot of things that a politician would like to do, but the reality is very different. One of the things that currently is on my mind is the amount of revenue or finances that campaign contributions have as far as influence on an election. We all know Paul here has run a great campaign. This will probably be his second great campaign that he's run. We really need to look at the money that's going into campaign finance. I'm obviously the underdog financially. Everybody knows that. There's no secrets there. We really need to look at how much money candidates are allowed to spend in elections. When you're running for a position that pays $30,000 a year, to drop close to $200,000 just to win a campaign, there's obviously something wrong with the system there. So that's what's fresh on my mind at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, just for the record, I think you got a 3,700 in campaign, you're around 270 right now.
I don't know if we're that high.
268, something.
Maybe a little bit less than that.
Okay.
200 something.
Yeah, okay. Let me get to the 500-pound gorilla. You lost a really close race
Right.
in Jacksonville
Yep.
by 2 votes up there. And then you were campaigning a lot as the hometown boy in Jacksonville, and that was kind of your shtick, I think. And then you moved to Flagler County, and I think I saw somebody on one line that said that you're a carpetbagger, and I don't share that, but I'm just saying. So you were in Jacksonville, you moved to Flagler County to run the race. Is that pretty much?
Not quite right.
Okay.
Really, my wife and I were looking at getting out to the coast, and we love St. Augustine. We're not as close to St. Augustine as maybe we would like, but we wound up in Palm Coast, which is where kind of what we hope to do. We don't have kids yet, and so this was the time to do it. After that race, and concurrent with that, there was this opportunity that opened up. What I will say to you is that in between where we did live and where we do live now, there's not 1 or 2 or 3, but actually 4 seats that will be open that are quote unquote Republican seats. Had I wished to move it would have been a lot easier to do that. So either I'm really geographically challenged, or I like where I live, and it's the latter. And so we're happy where we are. And so that happened, and the family piece fell in the line at the same time that the special election opened up. We actually moved before the last election and before all the resignations took place. So had Travis Hudson decided not to run, then I would be out campaigning for Travis Hudson and not running.
You
So,
know Travis well, don't you?
I now know him pretty well. I
You
did
guys-
not
he
know
did-
him.
He did some he kind of took you around quite a bit, didn't he, campaigning?
Well, I asked when I went down there. I did not know Travis very well coming down, but he was the member I was seeking to replace, and so I asked him who would be the people I should reach out to, who should I speak with. I think that's the right approach. And so from that experience, and obviously we're both Republicans, and we're now the Republican nominees for State House and State Senate, so we've become very close, and we'll need to work closely together if we're both elected.
So he did, but he campaigned he's campaigning for you.
I would say that's not at all true during the
Okay.
primary.
Okay.
I would say that's not at all true now, and he's got his own campaign. I wouldn't say that's true now either,
Yeah.
but we are good friends now. But we weren't coming down. I had met him, but I didn't know him very well.
You guys have the same campaign treasurer, do you not?
We do
Okay, how does that
play
is
in,
it- Yeah,
not at all. I mean,
are there professional?
as Adam said,
I don't know, if
you're-
they're professional treasurers and a lot of people use them, or is it just somebody you both happen to know? Or?
It's somebody we both happen to know, and they're a well-respected, group in Tallahassee. And when Adam talked about campaign finance, one of the things you want to do is you want to get it right. And I'm a history major, in part because I'm not, an accountant. So I wanted to make sure we had somebody that had a great reputation at counting the contributions and the expenses properly, and they have that reputation.
Okay.
So sticking with the gorilla in the room, actually, we did know that this special election was coming up. It was orchestrated well over a year ago. Anybody who really follows politics and looks into the history, this was coming down the pipe for a while. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm fairly certain that we all knew this election was going to happen, and that's part of why Paul is great as he is. I really do actually like Paul, but I do have a problem personally with someone who just moves into the district, happens to be around an election that was known, especially in the party, and then decides to run for this office. So this is my home, and this is not how I want my community to be represented.
Yeah, I think I probably should respond.
Sure.
I'll tell you, I got phone calls right after that race because they said, we had everybody's support. We just didn't have the money. And Adam talked about money. We raised a lot of money in that race, and we're still outspent 2-1. So money does play a role in the outcomes. And so we had a lot of people say, look, we think you're the right guy based upon your background as a military vet and as a prosecutor and as a business lawyer. We need to have people like you in office. Why don't you run for city council? And I said, I'm not really interested in doing that. And then I also got people that say, why don't you move to Mandarin? Because, a short trip across the river, and I would have been 5 minutes from work and that type of thing. And again, an open seat, a seat that's very heavily Republican, more so than this seat, frankly. And so had I wished to do that, there were a lot of easier paths to do that. And so that's why I say to you, it was a situation where the family piece came into play, and then the special election happened. And
Okay,
that's it.
that's good. You have a question?
I do. Today in our newspaper, we ran a story about a bill that the Senate passed yesterday regarding Medicare expansion. That's going to be a hotly contested topic in the session this year. Do you have any thoughts on whether you think it will pass, and do you have a position on whether the state should engage in Medicare expansion? We'll start out with
So
that.
it's great that you actually bring that up. Thank you, because I want to clarify there is another publication that made a horrendous misquote where it took Paul's quote and put my name on it, which it wasn't a St. Augustine record. It was something down in the Flagler area, which actually really did hurt me because I got a lot of calls saying, "How could you ever say that? You lost my vote," and then hung up. So it's really tough when there's misquotes that say I am absolutely unequivocally opposed to the expansion, which is what Paul's stance was at the time. I don't know what it is now. And then they put my name on that. So I am not absolutely unequivocally opposed to very many things. I would say seismic testing, offshore drilling is probably one of the things that I'm pretty close to being 100% opposed to, but it's more that I'm for renewable energy. Solar, I live in a 100% solar powered home. That's the direction we need to be going. Clean technology. Tech is the future. Dirty oil, offshore drilling, it's not good for our tourism here in Florida. So no, I don't want that. So I'm not opposed to very many things. I'm more for certain things. As far as that, I think any smart progress forward, if expansion is something that the people really want and are willing to help work towards, I am more than happy to continue to work towards that. That is not high on my priority list as a candidate. My home, as far as the district goes, it's renewable energy, education, and protecting our local economy. Protecting our local economy is keeping offshore drilling, seismic testing away, because our economy is based off of tourism and visitors, and we need to protect that. We all remember the BP oil spill, and they're still trying to recover. They're having a really hard time. We can't run that risk here. We need to make sure that we protect our local economies by not allowing that, by not accepting campaign contributions from those industries. So.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm opposed to Medicaid expansion. The Obamacare law would expand, or proposes to expand Medicaid. And I would not do so for a couple of reasons. One is Medicaid is really a dysfunctional program, and so to expand upon a dysfunctional program without significant reforms would be a mistake. And the other reason is that the monies that are coming and from the federal government are really borrowed on a credit card at this point. And we've got to recognize that if we pre-Obamacare, the federal government's budget is headed to a crisis at some point in the future. And so when we talk about that $50 billion or so, it's really the taxpayers' money, but it's not even that, it's borrowed money against future generations. I just don't think that's responsible. I do share the goals that were set out, and that is to have high quality, lower cost, and better access. And so I just think that Obamacare has failed to deliver on those promises. We've seen people's health insurance be canceled. We've seen premiums go up. It has not met its promise to expand coverage at the rate that was projected. And so I just think there are better ways to get to it. And by reforming in a way that's more patient-centered and really does address some of the cost drivers in healthcare, you can bring the cost of premiums down, and then people that are struggling to afford private insurance can then afford it. I think that's the best way to expand healthcare, and we can do that in an innovative way. But with respect to the Medicaid population, I'd also like to see us innovate there. And we've done that in Florida, where we've gone to some managed care programs that has improved people's satisfaction with their health care. They have more options. And the reimbursement rates and the opportunity to see a doctor more timely has improved. I think that's what the early indications are. And that moves us in the right direction. Right now, you have a Medicaid population that gets poorer health care than those of us that have private insurance. And so I'd like to see ways that we can improve that for those that are indigent.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to see a lot of things too, but the reality is when we get there, a lot of things change as far as information goes. Right now, the Republican-controlled Senate has already, it's passed committee. It's now being moved forward, the expansion. What are you going to actually be able to do to prevent that from moving forward? Because that's, even your party is moving that forward. So you, as one of 120 state representatives in Florida, how do you do that? How do you stop what even your own party is trying to move forward?
Well, I think in the House, and you'd asked this question, Delinda, about whether it would pass, and I don't think it'll pass the House. And I think the reason for that is because many of the colleagues over there, hope to be colleagues over there like me, feel that this is borrowed money, and that to take the expansion on the promise that the federal government is going to keep its end of the Medicaid funding is short-sighted and not responsible. And we see this year with LIP funding, low-income pool funding, where the federal government, in my opinion, it looks to me like a little bit of bullying that we haven't taken the expansion, so they're going to yank over $1 billion out of the budget that goes to cover uncompensated care for hospitals. And so to me, that's evidence of the fact that the federal government can't be trusted to keep its long-term commitment to fund that Medicaid expansion. And once you go down that path, it's really hard to walk it back. And so I am opposed to the expansion.
Okay. One other follow-up, another item in our paper today is that the state economist met on Tuesday talking about the projections for revenue growth, and it talked about that we may have roughly $1 billion extra in state money this year that we have to decide what to do with. So I guess my follow-up question is, if we're looking at getting, at facing a $1 billion deficit in funding from Medicaid, how does this play into the state budget? And do you think that this is going to be a hot potato that the session has to deal with really quickly?
It is a hot potato, and so the question is what the federal government's going to do and how they're going to handle that hot potato, because they're holding it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, we go from $1 billion surplus to break even or worse, and so it fundamentally changes whether we can give tax relief to working families, whether we can increase funding for education and roads and bridges and things that are important to all of us on both sides of the aisle. And all bets are off if that happens, so it's very important. And I know the governor and his administration are negotiating with people at the federal level to make sure that doesn't happen, and we'll see.
So I picked my battles. 2016 was when I was initially planning on running, because I did not know that this special election was coming up. So right now my battle is getting to Tallahassee to where I can focus on the issues that my constituents are concerned about. I don't have any comment on that.
Okay, thanks.
Education's awful big, and nothing's bigger now than Common Core. And I'm assuming nobody likes Common Core, but the question isn't are you for Common Core or not. The question is, what can you do about it in Tallahassee? Either way.
Yeah, the more I learn about it, the less I like. I think the problem that I see is I don't want to see our standards co-opted at the federal level, and I don't think there should be federal interference in what has historically always been a local and state enterprise, our education system. And so that's my first and main concern about Common Core. I don't know that it's not going to exacerbate rather than alleviate some of the concerns about over-testing. We certainly need to test in order to measure student progress, but I think the consensus is, and my sense is, that we need to dial that back to an appropriate level. There's a lot of stress, I know, among teachers and students, and we just need to make sure we're, again, applying a rule of common sense to our testing. And I don't know that Common Core doesn't exacerbate that, but so what I would like to see us do is I'd like to see us take a pause and look at where we are and make sure we're designing standards that are Florida-based and Florida-driven. And that, for me, is the priority. And that are high standards. I think standards and accountability have brought us from the bottom of many states to the top in the nation, our education system. And we see rising achievement among African American students and Hispanic students, which is very positive. We see increases in reading levels among all students compared to what it was. So standards and accountability aren't the enemy, but I'm not sure Common Core. I don't think Common Core is the answer. I think we need to continue to make it a Florida-driven process.
Yeah, Common Core is a huge issue. I was actually talking with one of the public school teachers, a good friend of mine, comes out to the community dance that we host and have been hosting for quite some time. We need to work to actually answer the question rather than take 10 minutes to give opinions on it. We need to work with teachers and also encourage parents to get more involved. We do need to make sure that education stays as local as possible so that parents feel that they have an influence over their child's education. That's very important, especially to me as a soon-to-be father. We need to make sure that we are a part of not only our community and our children's lives, but we need to be part of the whole system as far as education goes and everything in that matter.
So tell us, why should somebody vote for you as opposed to your opponent?
I think leadership. I think we need men and women on both sides of the aisle, frankly, that have done something in life before politics. And in my case, I think what I offer is leadership in the military, having been active in reserves for 20 plus years and in 2 wars. I joke that going to war is good preparation for the rough and tumble of politics. Except in war, you know who your friends and enemies are, and sometimes in politics you don't. But I think that background certainly, and as well as a prosecutor, which is one of the issues that the state deals with, our criminal justice system. I understand what victims go through, having stood in court with them, and I understand the importance of having a common sense approach to criminal justice and treating people with drug addiction differently than we treat people that on a repetitive basis hurt people. And so we need to come down hard on those that are hurting people and are recidivist, and apply common sense in areas where the punishment needs to fit the crime. Also, though, as a business attorney, I think that experience has been invaluable because it exposes me. I get to learn about all different kinds of businesses and what they need, what the challenges are that they face, and a lot of times that's government. It relates to government and what government does. And so that has been great background as well. And so I think those 3 things, my background as a veteran, as a prosecutor, and as a business attorney, and I should say as a partner in a firm where I've got to sign the front of a check as well as the back of a check. We've got to make decisions about employees. Our health insurance premiums are going up, and you have to decide, do we bear all of that? Do we pass some of that to the employees? What can we do this year? Property and casualty premiums. Those are all things as a small business owner that you deal with. And so I think a deep background in a lot of different areas will prepare me well for what the variety of issues you face in Tallahassee, but also the leadership that I've had over 20 plus years.
Okay. Adam?
So this is just some of the reasons why folks should vote for me. These are all from the record, from my history here in St. Augustine, Southern St. Johns County. Again, I was born and raised here. I am a member of this community. I believe that this position, state representative, should be as connected to the people it's trying to serve as possible. Grew up here in the district. I have lots of connections, lots of family. When the community hurts, I hurt. We need someone who is truly in touch with the people in the community they're looking to serve. I've been the president of Friends of Anastasia State Park. I've served on boards and committees and have done a lot of things that have prepared me leadership-wise. I was not in the military. They wanted me to cut my hair, so that was kind of off limits. So there are lots of ways to learn leadership and become strong. I am very grateful and have a tremendous amount of respect for our servicemen and women who go that route. To say that that's the only way, which Paul did not say, but for anybody who thinks that's the only way to get leadership skills, there's more than one way. As a small business owner here in this district, or former small business owner, just recently sold it, I know the troubles that small businesses go through with both the local government and the state government. I firsthand have experience in all of those areas. And yeah, there's a lot of ridiculous things out there that in time we need to get to and we need to address. But the overall purpose of this position, in my opinion, as state representative, is to represent the people, not just certain ideas. We need to represent the people when they're hurting. We need to figure out a way to solve those problems that the community is facing.
I have two other questions. One, do you have a position on the ability of college students to carry weapons on campus? Let's start with you.
As a gun owner myself, I am very much in support of smart gun legislation. I do not feel that it's a great idea to have all students carrying weapons, but at the same time, if we're going to, because it is unfortunately looking like it could go in that direction, how about we lead by example as government, and before we talk about that, let's see if we can't get concealed weapons in the House and Senate first. And then if it passes there, then let's start talking about the schools.
And I'm not sure, first of all, I favor the legislation, and it does not arm all students. What it does is it says if you have the ability to obtain a concealed weapons permit, which I have, and those of us that have been in the military are comfortable with weapons, and you can be less than 21 and get a concealed weapon. You have to be 21 otherwise, and you have to go through a background check. And if you pass through all of those things, and it includes, to get your permit, it includes training in the safe handling of a weapon. If you can do that, and you carry a concealed weapons permit, then just because you decide to go get a higher education doesn't mean you lose your Second Amendment rights. And so I think it's silly for us to exclude that. And so what it does really is it removes an exception to the rule rather than a new rule. All of us can go out and get a concealed weapons permit if we meet those criteria. And this just says if I decide to go to a community college here in St. Johns County, I don't lose my right to defend myself. And so I think it makes a lot of common sense. I support it wholeheartedly. And I think we can keep in place those exceptions to carrying a concealed weapon, such as you can't carry a concealed weapon in a bar. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't make sense on university campuses.
So I actually just went and got my concealed weapons permit as well, and that was so easy. It really was super easy. And like Paul said, it makes sense not to allow guns in bars because there's alcohol and all this other craziness that's happening. Does anybody else remember college? So that's college is essentially it's a lot of fun, and so the funny thing is that we don't allow it in bars for a certain reason, but we're going to allow it in a area that doesn't allow, but they have a lot of these party type atmospheres. So we need to be very cautious going forward with this. I did read over the legislation. There's things that can be worked with, but as it stands right now, we need to be very careful about where we are going to support our Second Amendment. I am a gun owner. I have my concealed weapons permit as well. I am not against guns, but we need common sense legislation when it comes to guns and our kids on school campuses. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless we do it right.
I know the sponsor of that bill is also, and I don't know if it's going to end up in the bill, but he's actually, at least sponsor's would also like to move the age from 21 to 18 because so many co-eds or college kids aren't, and that may be problematic a little bit as well. 18-year-olds aren't.
I'm closer to the college age than probably most anybody else in the room, except for you. You're probably 21. No. So it's the politician. You gotta throw those compliments out there. So I'm the closest one to the college demographic. The kids that I know, the ones that are still going to college, they don't want this. I'm connected with them via our wonderful technology that we have. I've been asking them since this became an issue and it's been brought up, and I'm asking them, what are your thoughts? I do have my friends who are like, it's a good idea. They're all the responsible gun owners that have their concealed weapons permits. They understand that for them, it makes sense to them because they are of the population that carries it. But the vast majority of students, they don't want that in their campus. It's going to hinder their learning ability, they feel, when they know that some of their fellow students around them, while they're taking a test, are armed. It's going to affect them while they're in school, and we don't want to do anything that is going to negatively affect our students as they're learning. That is something that could, whether it's a good idea or not, on letting it into the schools, the fact is it will have an effect on the psyche of our students as they're trying to learn. That's what we need to be concerned about.
I can respond to that. I think Adam's response reflects a misunderstanding of the legislation, but also the right understanding of it as well, because he distinguishes between students that are responsible gun owners, as he is, as I am, and that's what this is focused on. It is not, and with a misunderstanding, it is not saying to students, you will have a gun on campus. And if you don't want a gun on campus, don't have a gun on campus. But it says to those, and those people I know that are gun owners are extremely responsible, and I can say in my own case, I hope I never ever have to use it in self-defense. But having the ability to have it is important, and we have crimes that are being committed on campus. We had shootings all across the country, and that has occurred in the absence of this right. And so I don't see how that makes things worse. I think it makes things better. And I'm a big believer that you stop a bad guy with a gun with a good guy with a gun, and the police are often there, often arriving at a time where they're investigating. They're not preventing a crime, and that's not the police's fault, but you can make a phone call, but if somebody's shooting up the library, you might hope to have somebody who's done a tour or two in Iraq or Afghanistan who's a responsible gun owner who can stop them. And I support that right. And that's what the legislation does.
The legislation that I read, I did like the fact that it left it up to the individual school districts to make the decision. It wasn't across the board. That is one promising thing that I did see about it, because I do feel that if it is left up to local communities and the school board, that the people will come out, the locals in those districts will come out and voice whether they want it or not, and that gives them a lot more control and power, which is what we need. People in control and power, not government. So.
I'm not sure that's in the bill. I think they're trying to.
A local option?
Fighting, well, it would really actually be the other companion bill has something in it. I think it's that the presidents of the individual universities and colleges would have the individual schools would have the right to say yes or no on it. So, but I don't think that's not in the legislation.
Yeah, and maybe this is a difference. I mean, we're talking about this at length, but it's an important issue. I just don't. I think it's a Second Amendment issue, and I don't think the Second Amendment has a local option about whether you can give people their Second Amendment rights or not. And that's where I come down on this issue. And I just again think there are exceptions to the law. This would remove one of those exceptions that to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense, given that you've got to be 21, you're not that 18-year-old going to frat parties. And if you've gone to the trouble to get a concealed weapons permit, everybody I know that is in that category are exceptionally responsible. And so and it gives those people the right to defend themselves just because they decide to go to school.
I think this actually brings up a really good point, is that we keep talking about all these different bills and they keep getting negotiated and different things changed. Why are we talking about that on the campaign trail? We can't say whether we support something or not right now at this moment, because by the time we get there, it's very likely to look different. So for anybody to say you're in support of this or you're in support of that while it's still being discussed at the state level, and we're candidates that haven't even arrived there yet, we don't know what that bill is going to look like when we get there. So to say I'm for or against it would be ridiculous until we get there and see what is actually in the bill.
But I think we're talking about for or against the whole idea.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And I've stated my position. I don't know if Adam has, but I'm for it.
I'm in favor of the Second Amendment as a gun owner.
Okay. The last question that I have, sorry guys, is if you are elected, do you have any ideas of the certain committee or certain body that you would like to become involved with in the House that would be, make the most use of your talents? We'll start with you, Adam.
So, yeah, I do have those ideas, but I know as the newbie that I'm going to be at the bottom of the totem pole, and I'm going to get assigned essentially whatever they tell me to do. So I could say I want to be a part of a lot of different committees, but it's not going to carry any weight. Paul, on the other hand, is going to be able to say what committees he would like to be on, and is likely to get that without question. So, yeah, there's lots of things I'd like to do, but we'll see in Tallahassee.
And I'll dovetail onto that, given that it is a Republican majority, the way the House works, it's very hierarchical. It's similar to the military chain of command, and so there will be an ability for, I believe, for me to be effective as a Republican member of the House that might not be there in the Democrat minority, and that's just reality. It was true 20 years ago when the Democrats were in charge. And the committees I would be interested in are healthcare. I think if you look at the state budget, and we didn't talk at length about this, but if you look at the state budget for 30 seconds, you realize that healthcare spending is outstripping revenues. And that is going to squeeze out priorities that we, again, all agree on across the aisle, education, transportation, these types of things. So we really have to get our arms around that. And so a healthcare committee would be one of interest to me. Transportation and economic development, Northeast Florida in particular, having grown up here, the port is very, very important, not just for Jacksonville where it's located, but for St. Johns County, for Flagler County and Volusia, and those are the three counties, St. Johns, Flagler, and Volusia, that make up this district, to bring economic development in a real tangible way and great jobs, career jobs to our area. The other two that I would mention is, as a veteran, I'd like to work with veterans, and so military affairs would be something I would like to sit on. And finally, I would say judiciary or criminal justice, given the fact that I'm an attorney and have a background as a prosecutor. Those are important issues to make sure we're keeping our streets safe, our community safe, and defending victims.
I think it's important also to note that for the last 16 consecutive years, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office have all been Republican majority controlled. We need change. Unfortunately, we're not seeing a lot of movement in a lot of areas. I think a young, fresh eye on a lot of these issues is what we need. We don't need what I'm saying is SSDE. That's the same stuff, different election. We need somebody with new ideas, new eyes in there to start bringing up issues that aren't even being talked about, because we've been talking about these same issues. History major would know that we've been talking about these same issues and remolding them for years. So we need to start talking about things that we can actually work together on rather than just batting it back and forth.
What haven't we asked you today that you want to tell the voters?
What haven't you
Yes,
asked?
what have we left out?
And like your last shot.
My last shot. Well, I think for those that, I hope Republicans will vote for me because we share a similar view of the world. But for those voters who are not, those independent voters, there are many, I would appeal to them by saying that I'm going to be solutions oriented, and would go back to my previous answer, which is I think the reason to vote for me comes down to leadership and background. Is I think we do need men and women in office who had a broad background, which I've had both in the military, as a prosecutor, as a business lawyer. I've had some political volunteerism and that type of thing as well, but also leadership. And so I think I will also bring a fresh perspective, but one that is built on 20 years of experience in a lot of different areas, working with a lot of different people. And I'm looking forward to doing that, working across the aisle for solutions to people's problems. And I think you see at the state level less acrimony, less disagreement than even in this room today, where a lot of times Republicans and Democrats can agree on things that are just good for our citizens. And so I hope to be a positive a legislator, somebody that works well with everyone, and I think relationships matter. In addition to being in the majority, I'll certainly work well with people across the aisle to try to find common ground where we can find common ground without sacrificing principles. So I appreciate your vote.
Adam?
I hope in 2016 I'm this well polished to speak again for my reelection. So voters really need to look at this position for what it's meant for. It is meant for someone who is part of the community. I have a lot of Republican voters because I grew up here in this district. People know me. They've had chances and interact with me on a daily basis. This is not a partisan issue. This is not about what party you're representing. This is about the community that you're representing. I am part of this community. I've been here, I grew up here. That's what voters need to realize, is that I'm not representing just a party. I am representing my entire community. And that community is the community that also raised me. So it's not about party labels for me, it's about the community that raised me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You got it.